The original Reid Commission report said that it was secular. I think that's quite clear. But when you say secular, what do you mean? Because there is a parallel legal system within the constitution, which is a Sharia system. So some people have preferred to not talk about these labels or not use these labels anymore, secular or Islamic.
So
or
then,
hybrid.
Because of this dual system, practically what does it mean?
There are certain circumstances in family, matrimonial, property, where for people who believe in Islam, that system takes care of that. So that those questions, if you are Muslim and if it's related to property, divorce, matrimonial, trust, that type of thing, is housed within that system and cannot be brought into the usual civil law system.
So for the Malay Muslims, is it theological for them, the government practices and the law?
Well, I think there are questions as to whether the law is good, Sharia law, in terms of those matters. But the Malay Muslims, if they do not object to it, then that's their right.
But, I mean,
they don't.
That's somewhat faith-based.
The Constitution provided for it from the start. And I think there were some concerns that if our country was secular, then the role of the rulers and the role of the religion of Islam would be diminished. And I think there was some sort of discussion and compromise as to how it should be done. And this is how the framework has been set up. So I don't think the non-Muslims are questioning that. But the Muslims who say that the Sharia laws are quite unfair in a lot of different ways, it's up to them to take it up.
So
I don't see any contradiction in having a dual system. So long as the laws, the principles and the policies as well as practices are consistent with human rights.
So this dual system is still relevant today?
I think it's still relevant for majority of Muslims who many of them feel that they should be governed by Sharia law. That's the sense I get. I don't have research or survey, but that's the sense I get. And if that is their choice, then it's up to them what they want.
Yes, well,
it's linked to your question of what faith do you adopt. So it's then linked to the question as to whether you can leave the religion or not, or whether in the first place you actually honestly believed and adopted the religion, as opposed to now where there's a whole list of categories. We are born into a Muslim family. If one of you is a Muslim, then you're automatically a Muslim from childbirth. So those are separate questions which I see as quite problematic in our society, because we come from an Article 11 position where you should be allowed to leave the religion at any time, and you shouldn't have separate or automatic categories of people who necessarily once born into a Muslim family must be Muslim. But again, those are discussions which as human rights activists we can only take up if the Muslims themselves or the converts themselves want to actually fight it, and there is a sufficient number of people who will do the advocacy around it. We do not go around trying to, as some people have said, trying to encourage people to leave the religion. I don't think that's our aim. The thing is, a lot of people are quite unhappy with what's happening within the religion and within the Sharia system, the laws, especially, for example, if you're a woman and you don't get your support and maintenance, and the laws are quite discriminatory of women, then they come out and say, look, I'm questioning this faith, I'm questioning these laws, which is permissible. And when some of them come and talk to us about it and we say they want to leave the religion, it's up to them. So they make the choice, and then they say, look, legally what can you do, what can I do, and so we said, yeah, you can do this and do that, and perhaps take it to court. I think the argument is not entirely honest, because there are a lot of issues which are very interrelated. We live in a society that is not just so clear cut, where you believe in one religion and we believe in others, and so everything else that you do is totally different from everything else that we do. We're so connected in so many different ways, in so many different levels, and are part of the same communities. In a lot of ways, we can see creeping faith-based practices being applied in the civil service, and it's creeping, I think, all over the country. So, for example, if you go to courts now early in the morning, not that I have any real objections, but you go in early in the morning, you have on the loud hailers in the car parks, and in people saying prayers, and on the official, court, using the official court communication system. You have judges who actually come out to court and actually greet each other in the usual Arabic fashion, which makes, I think, minority groups and people who are not of the same faith slightly uncomfortable.
Is this a recent trend?
Well, it's more prevalent now. I think there's no question now that judges and people in official capacity are not afraid anymore. Maybe perhaps last time they used to do it, but it wasn't that prevalent because they may not be that brave. But I think now it's more prevalent. So you can't say it's a recent trend. It's increased, but I think it's happened for a long time now.
Okay.
And so, of course, non-Muslim minorities may feel slightly uncomfortable, or they do not feel part of the community of Malaysians, and these are small things because it plays on the mind. It's very easy to say, forget about it lah. Nothing, just less than a minute. I say, yeah, fine. We are very simple people in that way. We're not going to make a fuss. We just go there, do our case, and be off with it. But when it happens many times, it starts to play on the mind. In the long run. In the long run, and it becomes, it starts to grow in your psyche that, look, what is this? I never really signed up to this, and you try your best not to let it affect your work, but if it does sometimes, because now we have to become very politically savvy or politically correct in the things that we say after 9/11, for example. So all these things added together plays on the psyche of Malaysians, that there is not only a different set of laws for non-Muslims, which I think I'm fine with that to a certain extent, but also that in practices and policies there is some sort of overwhelming majority type of mentality, where you are not part of that same group. So it's majority minority, and you don't seem to have politicians or leaders actually wanting to speak about this and be more inclusive. Malay Muslims leaders who actually say, let's be more inclusive. Of course, you hear people say it now. When I say it, they also mean to
actually do something.
Yeah. As opposed to politicians who just want to say it for popularity or fame. I think this whole debate this debate will never end. There's a lot of stuff written on it. A lot of academics have written on it. I would not take any extreme position. Of course, when I was younger, I think it's quite clear you must separate church from state. But if you separate church from state, you may then become like the fascists, or you may become like Hitler, or you become like the extreme, communists, where you can't even read any books, or the supreme being is the man.
But the idea being, okay, let's put it in context. Separation of church and state, as in separation of faith and religion from the administration of a country, from the executive government.
I think official religion, in terms of using official religion, using a formal religion and practices and principles in the name of that religion, is something I may not be very comfortable with. But there are a lot of good things in all different types of religions. So if Islam is the official religion in Malaysia, if Christianity is the official religion in England, we can use the same practices and policies, or teachings of those religions in official administration, if these are good things, if these are progressive things, without using the name of that religion. So why is there any harm in doing that? So we cannot, it's not so black and white. And so, like for example, if a political party says, look, I want to set up an Islamic state, and then people get jump up in arms, but the question is, what is an Islamic state? Exactly. Are we an Islamic state? Is this a welfare state? Malaysia is quite obviously a welfare state compared to a lot of countries. We actually practice a lot of principles of socialism, and which is a very good thing, because I think that on a basic minimum, a lot of our people's rights are protected. Perhaps not as well in the civil and political area, but economic, hospitals, healthcare, comparatively, we seem to be quite good. So these labels, Islamic state, non-Islamic state, are we secular, are we non-secular, are we hybrid, are questions which I think we should start moving away from, in the sense that we shouldn't be using these labels. I'm very uncomfortable using these labels. I think in the beginning it was, when we were younger, of course these labels are easy to grasp, but after a while, when you start thinking and talking to different people, the more pertinent questions is, what is the content of these things that we should be looking at? What is the content that you're opposed to? Say hudud, what are you opposed to in hudud? Because there are certain things which I think a lot of people can accept. There are certain things which may be tantamount to cruel punishment, which people cannot accept. So let's start talking about it in those terms, where politicians have they made it politicized, in the sense that they've used these labels easily to either dismiss or denigrate or to praise one party or another.